What's going on, everybody? I'll tell you a story today. If you like strange stuff and you like reading about strange stuff and investigating strange stuff, most of y'all have never heard this story, but you can investigate it, look it up on the internet, find out it's I'm about to tell you a true story, and I encourage you to look it up. It's very, very fascinating. If you like the unexplained, you'll like this. But most of the people have never heard of a man named John Hendricks. John Hendricks had another name too. They called him the Prophet of Oak Ridge. Now, I'm not going to really go into a whole lot about his life and his childbirth and all that. You can find all that online. You can find that in other videos. If you just look up the Prophet of Oak Ridge and different things, you'll find that. But he was born right after the end of the Civil War, just months after it. And his family moved to Bear Creek Valley, which is now Oak Ridge. And he married a lady. I think they had 2 or 3 kids. And one day he had spanked his youngest daughter. And I could get some of this wrong. I could get dates wrong or whatever. I'm just going off the top of my head. But he spanked her, and within the next day or so, she died. But it had nothing at all to do with the spanking. She died from diphtheria. But his wife blamed him because of the spanking. So his wife left him. She took the other children and moved off to Arkansas. Well, this devastated John pretty bad. So it also brought him closer to the Lord, is what he said. He went for a walk in the mountains, and he said he heard the Lord's voice speak to him, and it sounded like thunder. And it told him if he would lay his head on the ground every night for 40 nights and sleep, that he would show him the future and what's to become of Bear Creek Valley and the little farming community where he lives. So he done this. And he recalls that there was nights that his hair, he would wake up in the morning and his hair would be froze to the ground. And local people would come out and cover him up with blankets, and other local people would come out and try to talk him out of doing this. But finally, when it was done, he come out of the woods and he had some stories to tell. He told the people what was going to happen to the place where they lived. It was Bear Creek Valley, or Black Oak Ridge, but he told them they're going to run a train line from Knoxville to here. They're going to bore a hole in the mountain and run a train through that mountain. Folks around there had never, ever seen anything like that in their life. He told that there will be people transported and transporting things by the air, through air. Now, this was in 1900 when he had this vision. He also told people that there would be all kinds of people, thousands and thousands of people, move to Bear Creek Valley. And he also told that there would be huge ditches dug and huge buildings built, that this would no longer be a farming community. This would be a city, and thousands of people were going to move here to do something important. And there would be factories that would be built in this valley, and this valley would be huge. And he told exactly where these things would be built, on whose property they would be built on, beside whose property. I mean, he told all these things, and it got to where people started thinking that he was a little bit crazy. And then he told his final prophecy that they're going to make something here. There's going to be a great war, and they're going to make something here, and it's going to bring an end to this war, to this great war that's coming. And he said he would not live to see it in his lifetime. But he told the people that would live to see it, that lived around there, he named them off. And he said what they're doing here is going to be very important. But he also saw a huge explosion. And he saw the earth shake. And he saw people wailing and crying. So he went all over the community telling these stories. And one lady actually spanked her son for believing his stories. And I'm wanting to think that that boy eventually wrote a book. But they came and they locked him away in the county farm. Now, don't know if it's because they thought he was crazy. That's the way most people tend to think. Or if he just couldn't pay his taxes. But either way, they locked him away in this county farm. Well, he was able to break out of the farm and go back home. And dog's wrapped around something here, of course. So when he did, when he broke out and he went back home, he said he heard the Lord's voice tell him to take 8 stones, 8 rocks, and place around his porch, his property. So he did that. And when the sheriff came, or the police, they wanted to take him back, but they wouldn't step across the rocks. Instead, it says, the history says that the sheriff looked confused, looked puzzled, and left. And supposedly after he was leaving, when he was leaving, that John told him, said that county farm, that county workhouse, he said God's going to destroy that in less than a month. Well, sure enough, a few weeks later, it burnt to the ground from a lightning strike. So some of the people in the community started thinking that maybe old John was a witch, because some of his stuff had started coming true. They started laying track toward Oak Ridge, and a lot of it was where he said it would take place. But he went on and he married again. He married a lady, and he still talked about his visions. And finally, he got what was called consumption, what we call tuberculosis. And he knew that he was going to die, because he knew he would never see these things come to pass. And like I say, people, for the most part, didn't believe anything he said, laughed at him. The things he got right's coincidental. But anyways, he did. He died of tuberculosis. And it wasn't but 27 years later that people started showing up in Oak Ridge, and they started surveying the land. And it was government people. And then the next thing you knew, people got letters in the mail telling them that the government's taking their land. And couldn't tell them why. It's just a big secret. Can't tell you why. But you have till December 1st to leave, to move. And didn't give the people just a few months to get ready to move. And you gotta remember, these people had everything they had tied up in this land. They had livestock, barns, silos, everything. And they've got a deadline. Get out. I think they gave them $47, $48 an acre for their property back then. Property that had been in their family for years. So anyways, they went on and they started building these buildings, these massive buildings. And of course, he didn't have no words to describe the engines that were digging the footers for this. All he'd ever seen was steam engines or mules used. So he didn't have the words to comprehend what he was seeing, to relate some of these things he saw. But later on in life, it turned into Oak Ridge, and this is the place where the uranium was made for the atomic bomb that was used to end World War II, that they had dropped on Japan, 2 different places. So, and of course, in his visions, he probably saw the people of Hiroshima. He probably saw the people of Nagasaki. But these were things that had to come to pass for this great world war to end. But he saw it. He saw it all. And he told people, he said, I saw it. I saw it as clear as day. I saw it. And they all thought that he was insane. Well, later on, after all this happened, people started remembering John. His son actually got a job at the plant, at the Y12, at the Oak Ridge plant, working there doing something. And he went on to tell the people that worked there, and they thought my father was crazy. And look at all this. And now there's books on this man out there, and all this stuff. You can find everything I told you just about is online. I may have got some of it wrong. Like I say, I've not got anything in front of me reading off of it. But for the most part, everything I told you was correct. And that's just odd, you know, that this man got all this stuff right. I don't think he guessed all this stuff. Had no way of knowing anything about a great war in 1900. Of course, World War I come and went, nothing happened. A lot of people thought he was wrong. But if you look up the Prophet of Oak Ridge and you look up John Hendricks, you can see all the stuff he predicted that come true. I think he wound up dying in 1915, on June the 2nd, 1915. So, I mean, that's just odd, unexplained. And this is more of just a local story in these mountains. You know, this never really made the worldwide news for people to know anything about. I'm sure a few of you out there know about it, but for the most part, people has never heard this story. And it's an amazing, amazing story how this old mountain man, just an old dirt farmer, that the Lord took him into the mountains, into the woods, and revealed all this to him. And still people laughed at him. But after Oak Ridge was built, they wasn't laughing anymore. And I think you can actually go there and see his grave. I've seen pictures of his tombstone. But anyway, I thought that would be something that you all might want to investigate yourself, because it is very, very odd, very unexplained, and just downright weird. But there's a lot of weird things happening in these mountains. That's just one of them. Thank y'all.